I remember the exact moment everything cracked, like a glass dropped in slow motion. It wasn't even something dramatic at first, just a laugh. That's what gets me. A laugh I didn't recognize. It was our house, our party, the kind of Saturday night we used to plan together months in advance, back when things still felt like they belonged to both of us. Music humming through the walls, cheap string lights in the backyard, people drifting between the kitchen and the patio like they owned the place. I was at the grill, half paying attention to a conversation about someone's new startup, half watching my wife through the sliding glass door. Emily had always been the kind of person who drew people in, not in an obvious way, not loud or attention-seeking, but something about her made people lean closer when she talked. I used to feel proud of that, like I was the one who got to go home with her after everyone else left. That night, though, something felt off. I couldn't put a name to it at first. It was just the way she moved through the room, like she was floating on a different current than the rest of us, like she was in on something I wasn't. I flipped a burger and tried to shake it off. We'd been distant lately, that's the truth. Not in a dramatic, screaming match kind of way, just the slow kind of distance that creeps in when life gets busy and you stop noticing each other as much. I blamed work. She blamed stress. We both pretended that was enough of an explanation. "Hey man, you're burning those." I snapped back and looked down. The edges of the patties are blackening. I laughed it off, scraping them onto a plate like it didn't matter. It didn't, not really. Nobody comes to a house party for perfectly cooked burgers. But when I looked back through the glass, I saw her again. Emily was standing near the kitchen island, talking to Mark. That's when the feeling sharpened. Mark wasn't just some random friend. He was my friend, or at least he started that way. We met at work about 2 years earlier. Same department, same long hours, same complaints about management. He came over for drinks a few times, then dinners, then he just became part of the circle. I was the one who introduced him to Emily. That detail has been living in my head rent-free ever since. They were standing close, closer than people usually stand when they're just talking at a crowded party. His hand brushed her arm, and she didn't move away. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen in a while. Not the polite, social smile she gave everyone else. Something softer, more private. I told myself I was imagining things. You don't jump to conclusions over a hand on an arm. You don't blow up your entire life over a vibe. Still, I felt something sink in my chest. I stepped inside, balancing the plate of burgers like it gave me a reason to be there. The noise hit me all at once. Music, voices, laughter bouncing off the walls. Emily glanced up when I came in, just for a second. Our eyes met. And for a split second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not exactly, but awareness, like she just remembered I existed. "Food's ready," I said, louder than I needed to. A few people cheered. Someone grabbed a plate. The moment passed, or at least it looked like it did. Mark clapped me on the shoulder as he walked past. "You're a lifesaver, man. I'm starving." He smelled like my cologne. Not literally, but close enough that it made my stomach twist. I watched him grab a burger, laugh with someone else, like nothing in the world was out of place. Emily didn't come over right away. She stayed by the island, talking to one of her friends now, but her energy had shifted, or maybe I was just looking for it. Every movement felt loaded. Every glance felt like it meant something. I grabbed a beer and leaned against the counter, trying to act normal, trying to convince myself that this was just what happens when you let your mind wander too far. "Everything okay?" my friend Jake asked, nudging me. "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Why wouldn't it be?" He shrugged. "You just look, I don't know, somewhere else." I forced a smile. Just tired. That was the excuse I'd been using for months. It came out automatically now. But the truth was, I wasn't tired. I was hyper-aware. Every nerve felt lit up. I kept noticing things I probably shouldn't have noticed, like how Emily kept drifting back toward Mark, no matter who she started talking to. Like how he'd lean in just a little too close when he said something, like he didn't want anyone else to hear. Like how they both laughed a little too hard at things that weren't that funny. I told myself I was being paranoid, that this is what insecurity looks like, that I needed to get a grip. So I did what people do when they're trying not to think. I drank. 1 beer turned into 2, then 3. The music got louder. Or maybe I just stopped filtering it out. The house felt smaller, more crowded, like the walls were inching closer. At some point, Emily finally came over. She slid in next to me like nothing was wrong, like we were just another couple at our own party. "You okay?" she asked, mirroring Jake's question almost word for word. "Yeah," I said, looking at her. really looking this time. Up close, I could see the details I'd been missing. The way her makeup was a little more done than usual. The way she kept tucking her hair behind her ear, a nervous habit she hadn't had in years. The faint flush in her cheeks that didn't feel like it came from the room being warm. "You having fun?" I asked. She smiled. "Yeah, it's nice. We haven't done this in a while." "Yeah," I said. "We haven't." There was a pause. Not long, but long enough to feel it. Then Mark's voice cut in from behind us. "Hey, Emily, you gotta hear this story." Of course he did. She glanced back at him, then at me, like she was deciding something. It was subtle, but I caught it. That moment of hesitation. "Go," I said, before she could say anything. "I'll be here." She gave me a quick nod, almost relieved, and walked over to him. That's when something inside me shifted. It wasn't a realization yet, not a full one, but it was the first time I stopped telling myself I was crazy. Because crazy doesn't feel that consistent. Crazy doesn't line up all the little details into something that starts to look like a pattern. I watched them from across the room, not even trying to hide it anymore. I saw the way her body angled toward his, the way his hand rested on the counter just inches from hers, like it was waiting. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been minutes. It could have been longer. Then it happened. Someone turned the music down. I think it was Jake, trying to make a toast or something. The room shifted into that half-quiet state, where conversations overlap and everyone's kind of listening, but not really. And right in the middle of that, I heard Emily's voice.
Louder than it should have been. Sharp. Emotional. Like something had finally snapped. "Yes, we're sleeping together." The room went dead. Every conversation stopped like someone had hit a switch. I felt it before I fully processed the words. That drop in your stomach when reality hits you a second before your brain catches up. I turned. She was standing there, breathing hard, eyes wide like she couldn't believe what she'd just said. Mark was next to her, frozen. Someone let out an awkward laugh, like they thought it was a joke. It wasn't. "And I'm not sorry," she added, her voice cracking just enough to make it real. I don't remember moving, but suddenly I was closer. Close enough to see the panic starting to replace whatever had pushed her to say it. "Emily," I said, my voice sounding strange even to me. Too calm, too controlled. She looked at me, like she was seeing me for the first time that night. And in that moment, I realized something that hurt more than the words she'd just screamed in front of everyone. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't something that slipped out. This had been building for a while. And somehow, I was the last one to know. I don't think I breathed for a solid 10 seconds after she said it. The room stayed quiet in that suffocating, unnatural way, like everyone was waiting for someone else to react first so they could follow. I could feel eyes on me from every direction, like I'd suddenly become the center of a scene I never agreed to be in. Emily looked like she wanted to take it back. Not because it wasn't true, but because of where it had landed. In front of everyone. In our house. In my face. Mark didn't say a word. He just stood there, hands half raised like he didn't know what to do with them. Like if he stayed still enough, maybe this would all rewind itself. "Say something," someone whispered behind me. I don't even know who it was. I stepped closer, my shoes louder than they should have been against the hardwood floor. Every step felt disconnected, like I was watching myself from somewhere above, detached from the body moving forward. "How long?" I asked. That was it. No yelling, no dramatic breakdown, just 2 words that somehow felt heavier than anything else I could have said. Emily swallowed, her eyes flicking to Mark for a split second, before coming back to me. That was the answer, before she even spoke. "A few months," she said quietly. "A few months." It echoed in my head like it didn't belong there, like it was too simple for something that had just blown my life apart. "A few months," I repeated, almost to myself. "In this house?" She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Emily," I said, a little sharper this time. "Yes," she admitted. There it was. I felt something twist in my chest so hard it almost knocked the air out of me. Not just the betrayal, not just the fact that she'd been sleeping with someone else, but here, in the place we built together, the couch I was sitting on every night, The bed I thought we still shared, even if things had been distant. I let out a short laugh. It didn't sound like mine. That's efficient, I muttered. A couple people shifted uncomfortably. Someone grabbed their jacket. The party was over, even if nobody had officially said it yet. Mark finally spoke. Look, man. Don't. I cut him off, holding up a hand without even looking at him. You don't get to look, man, me right now. He shut up immediately. I turned back to Emily. Why?
It wasn't an accusation, not yet. It was a real question, because I genuinely didn't understand how we got here without me seeing it. She shook her head, like there were too many answers and none of them would come out right. It's not just one thing. Try me. Her jaw tightened. We haven't been okay for a while. That's your explanation? I asked, feeling something colder creep into my voice. We've been not okay, so you start sleeping with my friend? It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I shot back. You just said it out loud, remember? Her eyes flashed, a mix of guilt and something else. Defensiveness, maybe, or frustration that she'd been pushed into this moment. You've been gone, she said. Even when you're here, you're not really here. You're always working, always distracted. We barely talk anymore unless it's about bills or schedules. So you replace me? I asked. That's the solution? I didn't plan it, she said, her voice rising. It just happened. I almost laughed again. That line, the one everyone uses like it makes things less deliberate. It just happened, I repeated slowly, multiple times over a few months in our house. When I finally looked at Mark, he couldn't even hold my gaze. He stared at the floor like it might open up and swallow him. How long have you known him? I asked Emily. 2 years, she said. And how long did it take before you decided I wasn't enough anymore? I pressed. Her face tightened. This isn't about you not being enough. Then what is it about? I asked, louder now. Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty simple. The tension in the room was unbearable. People were pretending not to listen, but nobody was leaving yet either. It was like they were frozen, stuck watching something they knew they shouldn't be witnessing. Emily ran a hand through her hair, pacing a step away and then back again. I felt invisible, she said finally, like I didn't matter anymore, like I was just there. And she gestured toward Mark without looking at him. He noticed me, he listened. I stared at her, trying to process that. So you needed attention, I said flatly, and instead of talking to me, you went to him. I tried to talk to you, she snapped. You never really heard me. That hit somewhere deeper than I wanted it to. Not enough to justify anything, but enough to sting. That doesn't give you a free pass to do this, I said. I know that, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I know that, do you? I asked quietly, because it doesn't feel like you knew that when you were sneaking around behind my back. Silence hung between us again, heavier this time. Then I asked the question I didn't want the answer to. Do you love him? Emily froze. Mark finally looked up, and for a second, nobody moved. She started, then stopped. Her eyes darted between us like she was trying to calculate the least destructive answer. That hesitation was louder than anything she could have said. Wow, I breathed. It's not that simple, she said quickly. It is that simple, I replied. You either do or you don't. She didn't answer. That was the answer. Something inside me finally snapped into place. Not in a loud, explosive way, more like a switch flipping. The confusion, the disbelief, the desperate need to understand, it all started to drain out, replaced by something colder, clearer. Okay, I said. Emily blinked. Okay.
Yeah, I said, nodding slowly. Okay, I get it now. You get it? She asked, like she didn't trust what she was hearing. I get that this isn't a mistake, I said. This isn't some one-time thing you regret. This is something you've been choosing, over and over again. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. I looked around the room at the people who were trying very hard not to make eye contact with me. Friends, neighbors, people who had been laughing and drinking in my house an hour ago. Everyone needs to leave, I said. Nobody argued. That was the easiest part of the night. Coats got grabbed, quick, awkward goodbyes mumbled. A few people gave me sympathetic looks on their way out, like that did anything. Jake stopped in front of me for a second. You good? He asked quietly. I nodded, even though I wasn't. Yeah, I just need a minute. He hesitated, then patted my shoulder and left. Within a few minutes, the house was almost empty. The music was off, the lights felt too bright. The mess of cups and plates looked like evidence of something that had already collapsed. It was just the three of us now. Me, Emily, and Mark.
I turned to him. "You should go," I said. He looked at Emily, like he was waiting for her to say something. "She said you should go," I added, my tone making it clear it wasn't a suggestion. He nodded quickly. Yeah, I'll go." He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair, fumbling with the sleeve like his hands weren't working right. At the door, he paused, glancing back at Emily one last time. "Don't," I said. He didn't say anything else. He just left. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was heavier than anything before. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, like I expected him to come back and undo everything. He didn't. When I turned around, Emily was still in the middle of the room, arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. Neither of us spoke right away. Then she said, "I didn't mean for it to come out like that." I let out a slow breath. "That's the part you're worried about?" Her face crumbled slightly. "No, that's not what I—" "What did you think was going to happen?" I interrupted. "That you just keep this going forever and I'd never find out?" "I was going to tell you," she said. "When?" I asked. "After another few months? A year?" She didn't answer. I walked past her, into the kitchen, staring at the half-empty bottles, the plates of food nobody finished. It all looked so normal. That's what made it worse. "This is insane," I muttered. "I know," she said softly behind me. I turned back to her. "Do you?" There was a long pause. Then she said something that made everything feel even more unstable. "I don't know what I want anymore." That landed harder than the confession itself. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about what she'd done. It was about the fact that she wasn't even sure if she wanted us at all. I stared at her after she said that, trying to decide if I'd heard it right, or if my brain was just scrambling to make sense of something that didn't make sense at all. "I don't know what I want anymore." It kept echoing in my head, louder than everything else she'd said, louder than the confession, louder than the months of lying. Because at least those things had some kind of shape to them. This was chaos. This was the ground disappearing under my feet. "You don't know what you want," I repeated slowly.
She shook her head, eyes glassy, like she was finally letting herself feel everything she'd been holding back. "I thought I did. I thought I could manage it, keep things separate until I figured it out." I let out a sharp breath. "Manage it? Like it's some kind of side project? That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," I said. "You thought you could have both. Me here, your life here, and him on the side until you decided which one you liked better." Her silence confirmed it. I leaned back against the counter, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the party. "So what now?" I asked. "You want to sit down and make a pros and cons list?" "Stop," she said, her voice cracking. "Just stop for a second." "No," I said, shaking my head. "You don't get to pause this when it gets uncomfortable. You already hit play on it months ago." She flinched at that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt thick, like even breathing took effort. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the wall, sounds that had always been there, but now felt amplified, like they were filling the silence we didn't know how to break. "I never meant to hurt you like this," she said finally. I laughed under my breath, not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully predictable. "You keep saying things like that," I said. "Like intent matters more than what you actually did." "It does matter," she insisted. "I didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy our marriage." "No," I said. "You just made a bunch of smaller decisions that led here." She wiped at her eyes, frustrated. "You're acting like I'm the only one who messed us up." I looked at her, really looked this time, trying to understand how we'd gotten so far apart that she could even say that. "Are you serious right now?" I asked. "You checked out," she said, "months ago, maybe longer. You stopped trying. You stopped seeing me. And your solution was to sleep with my friend?" I shot back. "I didn't plan for it to be him," she said quickly. He was there. He listened. He took advantage," I cut in sharply. Her expression hardened. "Don't do that." "Don't do what?"
Don't make him the villain so you don't have to look at what was already broken between us. That hit a nerve. Not because she was right, but because there was just enough truth in it to make it uncomfortable. I know we weren't perfect, I said. I know things weren't great, but there's a difference between having problems and blowing everything up. She let out a shaky breath. I didn't think it would go this far. That's the problem, Emily, I said. You didn't think. You just drifted into it, and now here we are. She leaned against the opposite counter, mirroring my posture without realizing it. For a second, it felt like one of those late-night conversations we used to have, back when we were on the same side of things. Except now we weren't. I felt alone, she said quietly. So did I replied. That seemed to catch her off guard. You did? She asked. Yeah, I said. I just didn't go out and find someone else to fix it. She looked down at the floor, her shoulders slumping slightly. I didn't think you cared anymore. I let that sit for a second. That doesn't give you the right to rewrite what we had without telling me, I said. I know, she whispered. Another long silence stretched between us.
I pushed myself off the counter and walked past her into the living room. The aftermath of the party was everywhere. Cups on the coffee table, a spilled drink staining the rug, a jacket someone had forgotten on the back of a chair. It looked like a scene frozen in time, like if I didn't touch anything, maybe none of this would be real. Emily followed me, stopping a few feet away, like she wasn't sure how close she was allowed to get. So what happens now? She asked. There it was again, that question. I rubbed a hand over my face, trying to organize the mess in my head. I don't know, I said honestly. That's the only honest answer I've got right now. She nodded slowly. Okay. Okay, I repeated. That's all you've got? What do you want me to say? She asked, her voice rising again. That I have a plan? That I know exactly how to fix this? No, I said. I want you to at least understand how bad this is. I do understand, she said. Do you? I challenged, because it doesn't feel like it. Her frustration boiled over. What do you want from me right now? She demanded. Do you want me to beg? Apologize again? Tell you I'll cut him off? That I'll do whatever it takes? I stared at her for a long moment. Yes, I said finally. Actually, yeah, that would be a start. She froze. The silence that followed was deafening. You want me to cut him off? She said slowly. I couldn't believe we were even having this part of the conversation. Yes, I said. That's usually how this works when someone cheats. They stop seeing the person they cheated with. She looked conflicted. Not guilty. Not relieved. Conflicted. And that was worse. I can't just... She started, then stopped. I felt something inside me drop again, like an elevator skipping floors. You can't just what? I asked quietly. She shook her head, pacing a step away. It's not that simple. It is that simple, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You either choose to end it with him, or you don't. I need time, she said. I let out a hollow laugh. Time? You've had months. I mean now, she said. After everything's out in the open, I need to figure out what I actually feel. That's what you were doing this whole time, I said, and look where that got us. She ran her hands through her hair, visibly overwhelmed. I didn't expect it to be like this. No one ever does, I said. Another silence, this one heavier, more final. I looked around the room again, at the life we'd built together, the pictures on the wall, the furniture we picked out, the small details that used to mean something. Did you ever think about me? I asked suddenly, while you were with him? She hesitated. Be honest, I said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Sometimes. Sometimes. That word cut deeper than anything else. I nodded slowly, like I was filing that answer away somewhere I'd never be able to forget. Okay, I said. I walked past her, heading toward the hallway. Where are you going? She asked. To get some air, I said, because I can't stand in this house for another second right now. Wait, she said, stepping after me. Can we just... No, I cut her off. Not right now. I grabbed my keys from the table by the door. My hand was shaking slightly, but I didn't stop. Are you coming back? She asked. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. That question felt bigger than she probably realized. I don't know, I said honestly, and then I walked out. The night air hit me like a shock, cool and quiet compared to the chaos inside. I stood there for a second on the front porch, just breathing, trying to slow everything down. The street was empty, peaceful, like nothing had just happened. I walked to my car and got in, but I didn't start it right away.
I just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, replaying everything in my head. Her voice, her words, the way she looked at him. I don't know what I want anymore. I gripped the wheel tighter. For the first time since it all came out, a different thought started to take shape. Not confusion, not disbelief. A question. What if I wasn't one of the options anymore? What if I didn't wait around for her to decide? That idea settled in, quiet, but solid. And for the first time that night, something shifted. Not back to normal, not even close, but away from being completely powerless. I didn't drive right away. I just sat there in the dark, hands still gripping the steering wheel like I was bracing for impact, even though the crash had already happened. The house behind me felt different now. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a place I just discovered something terrible in, like a crime scene you don't want to walk back into. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Emily. I stared at it until the screen went black again. Then it lit up once more. Another call. Then a text. Please don't leave like this. I let out a slow breath and picked up the phone, not to answer, just to read the messages stacking up. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I didn't mean for it to happen like that. Same words, different order. None of them changed anything. I tossed the phone back down and finally started the car. The engine noise felt too loud in the quiet street, like it was announcing something. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. I ended up driving aimlessly for a while, taking turns without thinking, passing closed stores, empty parking lots, streetlights that blurred slightly because I hadn't blinked enough. My head was full, but at the same time everything felt weirdly focused, like all the scattered pieces of the last few months were lining up in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. All those late nights she said she was at a friend's place, the sudden interest in going out more, the way she'd sometimes smile at her phone and then lock it when I walked into the room. It was all there. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I pulled into a gas station without really needing gas, just because it was open and there were lights. I parked near the edge of the lot and killed the engine. The silence came rushing back in. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Emily, it was Mark. I stared at his name on the screen for a long second, my jaw tightening. Of course he'd call. I almost declined it. Honestly, that would have been the smarter move. But something in me wanted to hear what he had to say. Maybe to confirm just how far this had gone. Maybe to see if there was anything left of the guy I thought I knew. I answered. What? I said, not bothering with anything else. There was a pause on the other end. Hey, man. I laughed once, sharp and sharp. Don't call me that. Okay, he said quickly. Look, I know you're pissed. Pissed? I cut in. That's the word you're going with? I don't know what else to say, he admitted. This is messed up. Yeah, I said. It is. Another pause.
I could hear him breathing, like he was trying to figure out how to navigate a situation he'd helped create. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, he said finally. There it was again. That same line. Did you both rehearse that? I asked. Or is it just the default excuse when you get caught? It's not an excuse, he said. It's just the truth. No, I said. The truth is you've been sleeping with my wife for months. He didn't argue that. I didn't plan it, he added weakly. Stop saying that, I snapped. You don't accidentally end up in someone else's bed over and over again. You made a choice. Every time. He went quiet. I know, he said after a moment. I know I messed up. You didn't just mess up, I said. You blew up my life. I know, he repeated, softer this time. There was something almost pathetic in the way he said it, like he genuinely didn't have anything better to offer. I leaned back in my seat, staring out at the empty lot. Why? I asked. He hesitated. It just happened. I closed my eyes for a second, exhaling slowly. Try again. Another pause. She was unhappy, he said. We were talking a lot, and it just turned into something else. And you didn't think maybe I shouldn't do this to someone I call a friend? I asked. I did, he said quickly. I did think that, and you did it anyway. Yeah, at least he wasn't pretending otherwise. I care about her, he added. That sentence hit differently than everything else. I opened my eyes, staring straight ahead. Care about her, I repeated. That's what you call it? Yes, he said. I do. I let that sit for a second. Do you love her? I asked. Silence. Then, I don't know. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. You don't know. It's complicated, he said. It's not complicated,
I replied. You're just not sure if she's worth the fallout yet. That's not fair, he said. Nothing about this is fair, I shot back. But here we are. He didn't respond to that. Listen, he said after a moment, his tone shifting slightly. I didn't call to fight. I wanted to say I'm sorry, and I think you should talk to her, figure things out. I almost smiled at that. Almost. You think I should talk to her? I said. That's your advice? I think you both need to be honest, he said. Now you're big on honesty, I muttered. Another silence. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in the back of my mind since I left the house. Are you going to keep seeing her? He didn't answer right away. That was all I needed. I haven't decided, he said finally. I laughed again, shaking my head. That's perfect. What does that mean? He asked. It means both of you are in the same place, I said. Neither of you knows what you want, but somehow I'm the one expected to wait around while you figure it out. That's not what I'm saying, he replied. It's exactly what you're saying, I said. Maybe not in those words, but that's what it is. He sighed. Look, I don't want to make this worse. You already did, I said flatly. Another pause stretched between us. I'm going to hang up now, I said. Wait, no, I cut him off. We're done here. I ended the call before he could say anything else. The silence in the car felt heavier after that, not just because of what he'd said, but because of what he hadn't. Neither of them knew what they wanted.
But they were both still choosing each other enough to not let go. That told me more than any clear answer could have. My phone buzzed again. Emily. I picked it up this time, staring at her name for a long moment before answering. Yeah, I said. Where are you? She asked immediately, her voice tight with worry. Out? I said. Can you come back? She asked. Please, we need to talk. I looked out at the empty gas station, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to keep driving until the night ran out, but another part of me knew that avoiding it wouldn't change anything. I'll come back, I said, but this isn't going to be the same conversation we were having before I left. What does that mean? She asked. It means I'm not standing there waiting for you to decide what you want, I said. We're going to figure out what happens next, for real. She was quiet for a second. Okay, she said finally. Okay. I hung up and sat there for another moment, letting that decision settle. Then I started the car again and drove back. The house looked exactly the same from the outside. Lights on, curtains half drawn, like nothing had changed, but everything had. I walked up to the front door, hesitating for just a second before opening it. Emily was in the living room, sitting on the couch, exactly where I'd left her. She looked up as soon as I walked in, her eyes searching my face like she was trying to read something. I closed the door behind me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said, "We need to set some things straight." Her expression shifted, cautious but attentive. Okay. I took a step closer, not too close, just enough to make it clear this wasn't the same space we used to share. I talked to him, I said. Her eyes widened slightly. You did? Yeah, I replied. And here's what I figured out. I paused, making sure she was really listening. You don't know what you want. He doesn't know what he wants. But you're both still in it enough that neither of you is walking away. She didn't deny it. And I'm not going to stand here while you figure it out, I continued. I'm not an option you get to keep on the table just in case. Her face tightened, like the weight of that was finally hitting her. So, I said, my voice steady now, this is where it changes.